Hey everyone, I hope that you are doing well. We are in a new location this week because this is the first time that I've had a moment to do this video this week. We're actually going to finish out the Gospel of Mark this week, and Mark has been so incredible. Again, I love it. So action-packed, so fast-paced. And there's a couple of things in Mark 14, 15, and 16 that I want to pull out today. And I hope it's helpful to you as we finish the Gospel of Mark, and then next week we'll jump into Luke in our journey through the New Testament this year. And so I want to start off with this. Mark 14 starts out with a story about a woman who goes and she anoints Jesus with this extremely expensive, extravagant jar of perfume. Right? It was a jar of perfume that many people believe cost about a year's wages, and everybody's questioning her. Right? Why would she do this? This is such a waste. Why would she break a jar of perfume that was that expensive on Jesus? Why would she use that? It could have been sold and given to the poor and all of those kind of things. But you know what? For this woman, it was not a big deal because Jesus was worthy of this. She was willing to give anything to this man. This man had changed her life so much that she was willing to do anything or give anything for this man. Such an incredible, extravagant sacrifice. And it just makes me ask the question, am I willing to sacrifice that kind of thing for Jesus? Do I think that he's worthy enough of an extravagant sacrifice like this? But more than that, as Jesus is addressing the people who are asking him questions, one of the things that he says, about her, is he's saying, hey, y'all leave her alone, stop bothering her. One of the things he says is, she has done what she could. You know, I think one of the things that we run into too many times is the trap of comparison. We compare what we can do to other people. We compare our what we are doing to what somebody else is doing. We get in this place where we are like, well, I can't, I'm not doing as much as this person, or I'm doing more than this person, or I feel like I should be doing more, or whatever. Here's what I know. Every single one of us, we can do something different. We're all gifted differently. We all have different levels of resource. We all have different levels of time. We're all in different seasons of life. And so the question is not, am I doing what so-and-so's doing? Am I doing what so-and-so says I should do? The question is, am I doing what I can do? In the season of life I'm in, with the time I have available, with the resources that God has blessed me with, am I doing what I can do? Am I doing what God has called me to do in this moment? Am I doing what God wants me to do in this moment? That's the thing that we need to measure. That's the measuring stick for us. It's not about what anybody else is doing. It's not about anything other than, am I doing what I can do based on what God has given me, where I am in the season of life that I'm in, with the time and the resources that I have? And so the question for you is, are you doing what you can do for God? And then as they continue going on in Mark 14, we find Jesus before he gets arrested, and he's in the garden, right? He's in the garden before he gets arrested, and he says, Abba, Father, right? That intimate relationship. All things are possible for you. Take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what you will. And then right after that, he tells his disciples, hey, stop falling asleep and pray, because the spirit is willing and the flesh is weak. So a couple of things there. First of all, as believers, one of the things that we need to do is we need to be praying. We have a relationship with God where we have access to him available. We need to be praying to God. It is an intimate relationship. And in our prayers, we need to take a lesson from Jesus. We don't need to fake it. We need to be authentic. We need to be honest with God. That's what Jesus did, right? God, if there's any other way, if I don't have to go through this, please make it so. If there's any other way, but God, it's not about what I want, it's about what you want. And so this gives us such an insight to how we should pray. We should pray with authenticity, with honesty, telling God how we really feel, but then also coming to God and saying, hey, God, this is what I want. This is what I feel. This is what I'm going through. But it's not about what I want. It's about what you want. And then in Mark 15, as Jesus has been arrested and he's in front of Pilate, and Pilate is asking, do you want me to give Barabbas, or do you want me to give Jesus? It's my custom to let a prisoner go. And really, we find ourselves in the story of Barabbas, right? The ones who are guilty that are let go and set free, because the one who was innocent got treated like he was guilty on our behalf, and therefore allowed us to get set free. That's what Jesus does for all of us who have placed our faith in Jesus. But it said the reason that Pilate let Barabbas go and sent Jesus over for crucifixion, even though he knew Jesus did nothing wrong, was because he wanted to satisfy the crowd. And so the question I have for us today is this: who are you living your life to satisfy? Are you living your life to satisfy the culture? Are you living your life to satisfy the crowd? Are you living your life to satisfy your family, or are you living your life to satisfy God? We need to be living for an audience of one, right? We're only going to be held accountable by God one day, not by anybody else. And so we need to live our life, because if you live your life to satisfy God, the crowd is going to be frustrated at that. Other people around you might be frustrated at that, but you're only going to be held accountable to God. And so for us, we need to ask, who am I living to satisfy? And every day we need to be aiming to live our life in a way that satisfies God and God alone. And then the last thing I wanted to pull out, or there's two more things. The next thing in Mark 15 is when Jesus breathed his last. It said the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Very clear that God tears this curtain. I'm reading the Old Testament too, and as I'm reading the Old Testament right now, you see the presence of God exist in the tabernacle and then in the temple. However, not everybody got to go into the presence of God. Not everybody got to experience the presence of God. It was a very exclusive thing. Only one person, one time a year, could go into the Holy of Holies. And this curtain is now ripped. And what that shows us is that now it's not just one person a year that gets to enjoy or go into the presence of God. Every single person who places their faith in Jesus and what he's done for us on the cross, his death and burial and resurrection, all of that, we all get access to God. And one of the things that I've been convicted by this week is I can't imagine those Old Testament saints who had to get up every morning, and they had to see the tabernacle, know that the presence of God was there, but they know that they didn't have access. They couldn't go into the presence of God. They would have probably given anything to be able to have access to the presence of God like you and I have access to the presence of God if we've placed our faith in Jesus. They would have given anything for what we have. But yet so many times, if I'm honest with you, and I bet if you're honest, you would say the same thing. So many times we take that access for granted. And we don't use that access on a daily basis. And so I'm saying, you have access to God. Why not use it? You would never have access to $1 billion in the bank and not access it, right? You have access to the most powerful God, the God who is all powerful, the God who created everything, the God who is all knowing, the God who is all seeing, the God who is everywhere. We have access to his presence on a daily basis. Why not use it? And then the last thing at the very end of Mark, we see our job descriptions as Christians. And what does it say? Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. Let me ask you this question as we end. Who do you need to preach the gospel to today? Our job description is to go into the world and preach the gospel to all creation. So who do you need to preach the gospel to today? Somebody in your family, somebody in your neighborhood, somebody at work. Who do you need to share the good news of Jesus with and what he's done in your life with today? Let's look for that opportunity and ask God for the boldness and courage to take the opportunity when it comes our way. I love you guys. That's the end of Mark. We'll see you next week as we begin the Gospel of Luke.